Hey Jennifer.
Hi there.
Cool. Um, all right, so we're gonna kick things off. Thank you everybody for joining. We got 45 minutes here. Just want to give the lay of the land of what the next 45 minutes are going to look like. So in the first 5 minutes, we'll do some quick introductions. I'm going to give a quick intro to Apex leaders for those who aren't familiar with what we do. I know a lot of people on this call are, so it might be a little redundant, but just going to give a quick insight into what we focus on. I'll then pass it to Jennifer. She'll go through the bulk of the kind of presentation today. And then we're going to pause with like 5, 10 minutes left just to do some Q&A. We'll do a final send off and that'll be it. But thanks everybody for making the time today. Introduction wise, my name is Dylan. I'm the VP of Sales at Apex Leaders. I handle all of our new business and client acquisition, and I work with a lot of our firms throughout the onboarding process as they're using our services. And I'll pass it to Jennifer for her introduction.
Yeah, hi, good to see everyone. That's Jennifer Lendler. I lead Aliyah Advisors, and we focus on providing tactical and practical approaches for private equity and operators around artificial intelligence with, making sure that the human's at the core, but also being mindful that everyone's on a journey of being able to apply these very powerful tools in a way that makes sense for them. So happy to be joining my partners with Dylan today.
Great. And again, just a quick kind of intro to a little bit about Apex and in our philosophy, and kind of just what makes us different in the expert network kind of universe. So we, at the end of the day, we try to do three things for our clients. That's build conviction, grow your networks, and close more deals. We typically work with private equity firms, but really anybody that's doing M&A. And if we're accomplishing these three things, at least in our mind and our philosophy, we're doing our job. This is just more to our approach, just like five things that are just critical in terms of our values and our philosophy. One is just when we think about, the firms we work with, we think just being a thesis-oriented investor super important. We help a lot of firms out during thesis development and thesis ideation, and we think to separate yourselves kind of throughout that investment process is super important to be a thesis-driven firm, and a lot of our clients think that way as well. The second is just getting connected with a river guide. This can be someone you work with as earlier on as when you're doing theme and thesis ideation. It could be later on during due diligence, but we believe having that river guide or that longer term expert or an advisor to work with kind of throughout that process and even post close is super important to the success of a lot of our clients. The third is we just want to make sure you're speaking to the right people at the end of the day. We know the expert network worlds can be hit or miss sometimes, and our philosophy and our process is super oriented around doing the work beforehand. So when we make introductions to experts, advisors, SMEs, river guides, they can provide value to our clients, and you're not wasting, an hour long or 30-minute call by realizing 10 minutes in, hey, I'm not speaking to the right person to help me gain the conviction that I need. The fourth is, and for the clients that are on this call, I'm sure you all know this, but if you don't leverage us for your portfolio companies, we do a lot on the value creation side. We help firms do one-off board of directors searches. We can help with M&A for add-on. So if you're a client and your portfolio companies are not leveraging us, send those projects our way. We love working with our clients' portfolios. And the last is we just really view all of the relationships and engagements we have with our clients as a true partnership. We really want to understand what are the values of our clients are, what are the pain points we can solve for, and again, how we can help you all, build conviction, grow your networks, and close more deals. So just a little bit about Apex for those who don't know about us. I'll pass it to Jennifer to kick things off now, though.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan. Well, I'm really excited to be here, and thanks to everyone on the call for joining. I think this is going to be really informative. Basically, as I mentioned, Elite Advisors, we're an AI advisory and agentic AI development firm, but We do the work in a lot of primarily lower and middle market private equity space and operators and portcos. And for me, quick background on me, I've 20 years in artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, and software development. I've worked at big four consultancy firms and leadership roles in corporate companies as well. So I've seen it from both sides. And I founded Elite Advisors because I saw a need in the market for practical and tactical guidance on AI. There's a lot of misinformation and a lot of noise and a lot of buzz about it. And this is something that's really powerful, and it's useful for not just tech firms or digital native firms or any of those other firms. And I really get a lot of pleasure in bringing the insight about how this can make a difference in everyday processes within a business. So, what are we going to talk about today? Let's get to it. First, we're going to jump in and do just that, like demystify AI. Let's talk about the difference between the tools that exist and agentic AI so that when you leave here, you'll have a better understanding of what you use which one for. The current challenges and hurdles that we're seeing that are everybody's probably feeling on this call, and how to navigate the real challenges and really get results. Then we'll get really specific. There's actually 4 areas of focus that I consistently see and that are great places for everyone to kind of lean in on if you want to get a return on your AI effort. And finally, we'll go through what we're providing for the participants today, something that I give every client of mine. And basically, it's your assignment should you choose to accept it. It is an AI readiness checklist, and I think you'll find it really helpful. And we'll leave time at the end for Q&A, but let's just dive in. So this is a pretty meaty slide, but I think it's important because it gives you a sense for, I think, why there's a lot of confusion around AI and the distinction between AI tools and agentic AI. So AI tools, I think a lot of folks on this call are using these things. They're like Claude and ChatGPT. Think of anything that you have on your phone or your laptop that's you're asking it a question, you open it up and it gives you something back, and kind of everybody's using that same tool. I actually call this conversational assistant because you're having a conversation with it, but it's kind of initiated by you, and it's a question you give it and it gives you something back and you go back and forth. So it's really useful, but it definitely has its limitations, and you have to be very, very specific about what you ask it and give it lots of context. And these tools are based individually, specifically on one, usually specific large language model that's designed for that. Agentic AI, however, is very different. And this is one agent that can do many things. So think about a multi-stage process in your world. It's designed to execute that process all the way through and not just respond to you. So think of a really complex process like, we'll talk about due diligence later, but due diligence involves a number of steps. It involves like agreeing to an NDA. It involves reviewing a SIM and doing research on a company and comparing that company to your investment criteria, and then producing some sort of report that you take to investment committee and then eventually an IOI. That's a multi-step process. That's where agentic AI shines, because this is truly a digital worker. It knows you, it knows what you want, it knows specific information about you, it's designed for you, and it's secure. And it's complex because, it requires proper design, but it's super powerful. And frankly, in my mind, the only limitation to agentic AI systems is really the imagination of the team and the designers. But again, it's about replacing or augmenting a current process. It's not just the one-on-one. And so each of these tools are useful for different things. So we're curious where you are on your journey. And so we've got a poll to ask you about where you are right now. Are you using off-the-shelf tools? Are you in the middle? Are you kind of doing advanced AI? So I love this. I'm seeing a whole bunch of variation across the spectrum, which is amazing. So I would say 60% of you are really in the beginner stages using these tools. A good 30% of you are doing purpose-built POCs in your firm proofs of concept, and 11% of you are seeing the benefits of agentic AI. So I think that's fantastic. So I think you're going to get some value out of today's discussion. So let's dive in a little bit about the current state of AI as we see it. There are 3 areas where I consistently see the divergence between a PE firm who's successful in their efforts and their pursuits of AI and those who flounder. So even if you are in that first bucket where you're just kind of navigating your way through the tools, this is going to be really helpful because you'll be able to address these issues head on as you progress, and you'll get returns more quickly. So first, I hate to say it, but the decisions you make now have consequences. And if you have no plan and folks are just using lots of tools, you're going to have risks and you're going to have costs. You're going to get a patchwork of access, sometimes very little governance, and you're going to pile up technical debt that you didn't think about, as well as like the token costs that it takes to run AI tools. That takes me to IT. Some firms I know outsource their IT management, but they're still very involved in the decisions that are being made around the infrastructure and the budget. And sadly, it's very rare to see a line item right now in the budget for AI. And that really needs to change because this is an important aspect of your capital as well as that for your private equity firms. And finally, talking about, I'm sorry, your portcos. And finally, talking about portcos, you know, they're made up of your firms and your portcos, you're all made up of humans, not tools. And people are super fascinated, but they're also terrified by AI. And no wonder, like given the hype and frankly the layoffs that many public companies are calling AI related. So this leaves your employees nervous. And unless your firm and your portco leadership come out with a clear, articulated plan that you share with your employees, this will remain an uncertainty in your workforce and your team leads to fear, it leads to turnover, it leads to low productivity. So bringing in AI tools and platforms requires a really important change management plan to really get the most out of it. If you have the perspective around tools and agents and a budget to do so, but really fail to address this like human element about how your org is going to embrace this, I'm sorry to say you're going to kind of be doomed to not really succeed well. And so all these things that you're thinking about within a firm are also happening within your portcos. They're facing the same challenges. You know, what are their AI tools and agent decisions? What's their AI line item in the IT budget? What's their change management plan? You know, you should be asking them this or helping to create one for them. So no doubt, many of you have embraced some of these concerns, have seen some of these concerns. So, but I'd like to hear from you. And so we're going to go to our second poll. Tell us what's the biggest hurdle that you're facing in achieving the results with your firm right now? So I see a common theme, and it's actually pretty spread across all of this, but strongly, it's too many tools and not enough time to evaluate them. Absolutely. And the second winners are no one owns AI in your firm, and you don't know where it's going to add value. So I'm definitely comfortable now that you're going to leave today with some guidance on things that will help you in that regard. So this is what I call my how to not waste your money and time on AI slide. So over and over again, I see some common missteps, but if you do these things consistently, you will see results. So number one, you have to start with a goal. What do you want to achieve that you think AI can help you with? So do you want to source deals better and faster? Do you want to get a sales pipeline at a portco in a targeted region? Do you want to improve customer service? Do you want to have like more impactful investor reporting conversations? Like any and all of these are possible, but there needs to be a decision around what you're going to do with your AI. And I always say that your AI strategy is your strategy. Look at your corporate goals, your corporate strategy, the strategy of your portfolio companies. Everything that you're doing around AI should ladder up to those. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And keeping that close alignment between your AI approach and your AI strategy and your corporate strategy will definitely help you achieve results and kind of calm the noise and focus. Number two, communicate a plan. If you cannot clearly articulate the value to other people who maybe aren't involved in this about what you're doing, it quickly will become kind of a project, a side gig that takes up your time and pulls people in a lot of different directions with no value. And so you need to be sure that folks know what it's going to do and definitely what it's not going to do to avoid the confusion. And AI is a big tent. There's a lot of people that need to be engaged and should be engaged in anything related to artificial intelligence. So the communication part is really critical and it is time consuming, don't get me wrong, but it means that you're going to have people aligned with you to kind of get you where you need to go. And then finally, implement with discipline. This isn't, glamorous, but you got to commit to a structure for the rollout. You got to determine upfront why you're building it or buying it, because you could buy stuff off the shelf sometimes, agentic AI systems that could maybe solve what you're trying to do, but you need to have kind of a framework to decide the build versus buy. And if you decide to build, awesome. Have a plan, have a go, no go stage gate strategy, and absolutely be sure you have a RACI, which is that, responsible, accountable, consultative, and informed chart. Again, around the communication piece so that everybody knows what they've signed up for, everybody knows what they're going to be doing and what they're not going to be doing. And this might sound complicated, but the truth is this can be done on 3 pages. Like it doesn't have to be a lot, but just the effort of doing it and the discipline around it is going to make your AI investment not be a waste of time and money. So those are the things to think about and to look out for, but where exactly would AI add value to your business? And people ask me this all the time, like, where should I focus? Both within a PE firm and at their portco. So time and time again, I see large companies and small in every industry could consistently take value out of 4 areas to consider. And so here they are. Number one, this is more on the firm side. It's a growth lever. Your due diligence process, we'll talk about that next and go deep on that and what that means from an agentic AI perspective. Secondly, sales enablement, also an important growth lever for portcos, especially newly acquired or about to be exited. The ability to show a growth trajectory is critical to the valuation, and sales teams often, are given goals to achieve that they need to have new tools to go achieve them with. And so sales enablement is a critical growth lever and one that the right agentic AI system designed for you could really help. Third, customer service. And this doesn't have to mean that you have like a large contact center, but everybody has customers and everybody services them in a certain way. And customer churn is expensive. So a margin lever for sure in your portcos is a customer service approach using AI. And then finally, people don't talk about this much, but I really find that investor relations is an important growth lever. It's some place where you could build loyalty with an investor base. And also, by the way, there's so much time and effort spent within PE firms at the CFO or COO level producing quarterly reporting and other things that could like be taken off their plate with the right AI that I think it's really critical. So let's dive into each of these. This is going to be a long one because I know people are interested in due diligence. So we'll go through it as quickly as possible. But just step back first of all and just think like, what's the optimal state for good due diligence? What are you trying to do? You're trying to find the best deals quickly. You're trying to find deals that match your investment criteria with companies that have a solid footing, and you're trying to, be the winning bidder when it comes to talking to sellers. And that involves a lot of process steps. So let's think about those. You get a SIM, you review it. Before that, you have an NDA. As you review your SIM, you should be doing research, you should be analyzing it, comparing it to your investment criteria, reporting to investment committee. But what if you took that process and let AI do that? We talked about that at the top of this hour, that AI does multi-step processes really well because in each one of these steps, it might require a different model, quite frankly, it will in a lot of cases. And it allows you to have basically a digital worker, not just an individual prompt back and forth to get you through that process. So as a digital worker, AI can do all of these steps, can analyze this seamlessly. In fact, at Elite Advisors, we built an agent to do this that is your digital worker that like reviews your NDA and suggests the deal breakers and the risk areas. And then it moves on to looking at your SIM, by the way, in any language, not just English, because AI is really smart and it reviews it against in your own personal investment criteria. Then it does deep research, not Google, but like deep research around this industry, this company, the risks possible, the upside possible. And for private companies, that's often really hard to do. And then it prepares an investment committee memo. Humans are in the loop on all of this, by the way, because that's important that the humans now have a tool that can support doing all of that work that they used to do themselves. And so in our example, I typically see an analyst can maybe look at 7 deals a week and do all of that stuff, do it properly, do the research, do the investment criteria match, all that sort of thing. An agentic AI system can do that in 6 minutes. So rather than 7 deals every week, your team could be supported by looking through 400 deals a week. And so there's some serious ROI right there because the more you look at, the more likely you are to see those gems in, the process of the waterfall that is deals. And so It's also important because this is a place where you don't want to put your private, personal, PE, internal information in a publicly available tool. And so having your own tool means that you have a lot more control on who sees it, who manages it, where the information goes. But at the same time, the human is always in the loop. Again, think of this as like another additional analyst that's sitting next to all your analyst teams. So, this seems like a pretty good return on your investment if you get one more deal out of that river of deals that you can now look at that opens the aperture to other opportunities in Canada, in French Canadian territories, in Mexico, anywhere that are other languages. Just think about what that could do for your business. So there's real ROI in rethinking your due diligence process with this AI lens. But let's also talk about AI as it relates to due diligence as it is with acquiring new businesses. Are you now incorporating your thoughts around the risk of AI disrupting that potential business? Because AI is going to disrupt every business for good or for ill. So, do you have a plan for that when you're looking at new deals to say, how is this business going to be disrupted or potentially, benefit from artificial intelligence? Or how do we apply our own bespoke artificial intelligence that we've developed in this new acquisition over and over again to really drive value? So AI helps due diligence in two ways. One, just the process of it to find those gems quicker. And secondly, you need to be mindful of this being a really important game changer as you're looking for new business or new acquisition. Let's talk about number two. Our second area is sales enablement. So I would say 75 to 80% of the firms that I talk to will describe to me that their current sales process in some newly acquired portco was pretty arcane and hadn't really changed for decades. I'm thinking this will resonate with a lot of people on this call. Salespeople have their territories. Everything's very kind of analog, if you will, but they already know who their buyers are. They kind of go to the same people. And if they need to increase sales, if they have higher goals, then they just need to go get those folks to buy more or try and find new people. But they're missing out on the opportunity that AI can help them do. So, if you had a targeted AI tool that could expand that pool and hand that to a salesperson that was very specific to what you're selling and what territory you're looking at, it could be a game changer. And this is not list generation. This is like agentic AI surfacing things because it does deep research. You set criteria and, let's think about an example. And this is just a prompt to get you guys to think about examples for yourself. If you were a portco and let's say you're selling siding to end customers, what are the triggers when a person would need to buy new siding? So I would think it would be like the aging of the home. So if you did a scrape of all the permits in your territory from 15 years ago, that would help you understand which ones are probably coming to the end of their useful life. You would get addresses, you get new owners' names, and you could proactively automate an outreach to them saying, hey, we're in the neighborhood, come by. If you're a company that's like a commercial design services business and you know that your lead time for a potential deal is 6 months out of when an RFP drops, then you can use agentic AI to scrape for that information, to bring it back to you, to give you information about that potential deal and set you up for success to enable to increase that target list that your current salespeople have. So it's really informative. Public information is available, but it's not easy to get sometimes. And agentic AI is perfect for that. And this is also really helpful for family offices and service providers where they're in any business, but there can be a lot of turnover of traditional sales teams. We see sometimes when a new investment is made, some of the original sales team decide to retire. And so the folks that are new are the ones taking on the leadership roles and they don't have the history and the relationships. And they're also, just been given higher sales goals. So thinking about where you can use agentic AI in your sales enablement system will give you payback right away. I mean, you get one more deal or two more clients and you just paid for it and the rest is all upside. So number three, customer service. This is an area where, everybody's got customers and some have contact centers, some don't. Everybody's heard that contact centers years ago, especially before COVID, were really starting to change. They were using more AI, but it was really more sort of first generation chatbots, not really agentic AI. I know from talking to folks in this industry that the leaders will tell you that the call center rep turnover is like 100% in any given year. So think about the cost of onboarding and training and all that comes with that. So what if you could do more with less and make the customer rep's job better so they don't quit, and make your customer service proactive? And no matter what size sales team, customer service team you have, it could be 5 people, it could be 500. Artificial intelligence and agentic AI can help design a process. I've seen it mostly very powerful when it can anticipate a problem before it occurs and proactively reach out to customers. And I've done this a lot in other iterations of my career, but I'm thinking again, like to prompt the audience with some ideas that can get them thinking. Here's a couple of examples that might change the way you manage your business. If you're a dentist office in Philadelphia, where I am, and you've got a lot going on. You got FIFA, you've got an All-Star game, you've got the 250th anniversary, and you're in Center City and your customers generally come from the suburbs, and they are all of a sudden thinking, I'm going to cancel all these appointments because I'm not coming into the city because I can't find a place to park. Well, if you knew that already and you anticipated that, well, you know that already. You can use agentic AI to connect with those clients and say proactively, we know this is happening. Here's a designated parking spot. You automate it, you reduce your cancellation appointments. Like this stuff can be automated. You don't need to have people like reach out for this. You just, again, are hemmed in only by the imagination of how you want to provide customer service. And then I'm thinking also about like, if you're a cement services or asphalt business in a region that's about to potentially face severe weather in, a 3-day period, 3 weeks from now, because you can find historical and advanced climate data about that. What about if you created a client outreach to not only inform your managers that this is coming and they need to sort of maybe reschedule their jobs, but also have an outbound customer communication so that they know that you're thinking about it and you've got exceptional service in this regard and you really drive loyalty. So think about your own business. What do you wish you knew in advance that could matter, that could retain your customers and reduce churn? Because customer retention is both a revenue driver and a cost mitigator. And, what does losing one customer potentially mean to your 2026 revenue? Fixing that with agentic AI would get you payback pretty quickly. And finally, investor relations. This is the fourth one we added because it's really valuable and I think it often gets overlooked. Again, I talked about this at the top of the hour. You've got a COO, a CFO who's spending a lot of time that's not really terribly value added creating these quarterly reports to investors. Agentic AI can fix that because you can have an agentic AI digital worker that you design that speaks in your voice, that can scrape that data, that can pull analyses, that can create outbound information. Again, all with the human in the loop. It's not like this is going to go out without anybody looking at it. But now, rather than your COO or your CFO or your analyst team spending quarterly time, who knows, 12 hours every quarter doing the same old thing all the time, they're looking at something that's bespoke and clean and accurate, and they're checking for it, and then they're sending it out. And so think about how else you could use it to communicate to your investors and build that relationship, because loyalty with them means that they're likely to invest in your next fund. And transparency that comes with this type of reporting fosters understanding and really good LP relationships. So what's the ROI on that? How much does it cost to replace an investor or acquire a new one? How much is your CFO's time worth? An agentic AI system pays for itself easily in a year, and it provides a competitive advantage. So those are the 4 areas that we covered. I'm curious what resonates with you and your firm's needs and where you see the most value. Well, I'm loving this because you are equally spread, but there is a strong desire to consider the due diligence workflow end to end in a more holistic way, and also customer acquisition. And you're right about that. I mean, sales enablement is just really critical for the business that you're in. So thank you for your insight on that. So we've covered a lot, and I wanted to just sort of recap where we've been. So if you leave anything today, it's that thing in the top right box, that orange thing. Your AI strategy is your strategy. Everything should be done in service of your strategic goals. So that helps to calm the noise right away. But keep in mind, AI tools and agentic AI are different things, useful for different things. There's significant ROI you can get out of agentic AI. I mean, it is complicated and you need to develop it properly, but having a 24/7 digital worker is pretty powerful. You want to be mindful that AI tools and platform decisions you make now have consequences in the future. You need to be thinking about your AI spending and putting it into your current and future budgets. You need to inform your teams about what you're doing. I can't stress this enough. And then again, on the middle side there, or on the right side there, how do you start? Start with a specific goal in mind and decide to buy it or build it. Have a clear plan and being able to communicate that value. It's almost like the elevator pitch for yourself. What is my AI going to do for me? And remember, the strategy needs to be aligned. So now's the fun part. I call it your homework. But you'll be receiving after this webinar an AI readiness checklist. I use it, like I said, to guide all my clients on this path. I always have them fill it out. It answers important questions that they need to consider before they start this AI journey. And so my assignment for you is take this, fill it out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That gives you time, even with the holiday. And then sometime in mid-July, once you've done all that pre-work and gotten some input from others, I think you'd be ready to create an AI strategy, build a RACI, create a budget, do an execution plan. And of course, if you need help or are interested in having additional conversations, please feel free to reach out to me. Happy to talk about this. A sneak peek on this checklist, which we'll get to in a second, is things like answering questions that will get you on the right path, meaning you're going to dig deeper into the current resources you have, how far along you are in this journey, and get really tactical on answering some of those questions, especially if you want to dig in on the due diligence side. We have a whole section on due diligence that can help you improve that process by looking specifically at how you're doing it now and putting on paper things for all of you to see. You already feel this, but you probably need to see it in writing that says, we spend X amount of time doing Y things, and that's a big pain point. And there's also a section on creating a plan for your portcos, because that's super powerful to be able to expand this to your portcos and to look across your portcos and see what some of the similar issues and problems are that are consistent. Solve one, serve many. I think that's a really good watchword or watch phrase. So like I said, feel free to reach out to me if you need some help. This is like a little precursor to these foundational elements that are practical and tactical next steps that you can take. So we have covered a lot of ground today. I hope you found it informative and useful. I love talking about this. It's super powerful stuff, and I really appreciate your interest and attention. And Dylan and I are here for you to keep you on your journey. If you want to get in touch with Dylan, there's a QR code for Dylan. Also at Elite Advisors, we actually publish a newsletter called Need to Know, a clear-eyed view for AI and PE and operators, and you're welcome to subscribe. It's free. But now I'd be happy to take any questions with the time we have left.
Cool, thanks, Jennifer. Again, everyone, if you have any questions, submit them in the Q&A at the bottom. We're obviously not going to get to all of them, but any questions we don't answer now, we'll answer in a follow-up email or note after. But yeah, feel free to submit any questions that you have. I'm going to read off a couple and try to get through as many as possible, but we only have 10 minutes here, so we'll see how it goes.
We'll do the speed round.
Speed round, yeah. Okay, Jennifer. So one of the questions was, what compliance issues should we watch out for regarding AI?
Yeah, thank you. I love this topic, and we don't talk about it enough. I actually developed the AI risk confidence framework for a Big Four firm years ago because there are many places along those steps that there needs to be governance and guardrails. And so you need to think about deconstructing the process of what your artificial intelligence systems are doing and being sure you put really clear governance and compliance checks along the way. And so that it doesn't, again, have to be onerous, but having even asked that question means that you're on the right path. And so it means, who has access? The classic compliance questions, who has access? Who can change things? Where does the data reside? What models are we using and how are they changing? And again, if you have an agentic AI system that's yours, you know where that lives. If you're using a tool, you need to ask your vendor about those questions. But there's a whole host of those kind of issues that can absolutely be addressed and should be addressed. You should be sure that if you're buying something off the shelf, that it's SOC 2 certified, because that means it's gone through a certain amount of rigor. And those are conversations where, like I always said, AI has a big tent. And so that tent involves legal and finance and compliance and operations teams as well together, so that what you're doing, you feel confident about. So that's a really important question and something that often gets overlooked.
Cool. Great. Thanks, Jennifer. The next one is, in order to implement AI, do we have to fix our data first or no?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, everybody loves really super clean data, but the wonderful thing about this is when you design a system, you look at it like a flow. You know what data you're getting and you know what you're going to do with it. So you try and pick data sets that are as clean as possible. But you're also not just using your own internal data sets to do a lot of the stuff. As I mentioned in like the sales enablement piece, a lot of that is publicly available information. It's hard to get, but it is out there. And so you can fix your own data. That's helpful, whatever fix means. You want it to be pretty accurate, but knowing the quality of the data you have as an starter, as you begin to design your agentic AI, is critical. But you don't have to have a massive data cleansing, data migration project to begin to get benefits from agentic AI. It just means you need to be mindful of um, the robustness of your data. If you feel like it's 75% accurate, if your CRM is 75% accurate on customer name, email, who knows, then that's a consideration. And so what that means maybe is that you add a second step to validate and verify. So you don't have to have everything be clean, but you do need to be mindful of the quality of the data, because it's going to impact the design of your agentic AI. And then, like I said, also as well, if you're using outsourced public data, that's something you don't necessarily have control over, but you ask those questions about how, you can figure out like how fresh this is and how accurate it is. And that's why you run tests and do this and see, did it actually give me the answer I thought it did? So that, again, that along with compliance is a really important question to talk about as you get into the weeds of the design. But it doesn't mean that you have to fix everything before you can start.
Yeah, that's great. The next question was, and this kind of pertains to kind of what you mentioned about this is happening at the firm level, but also the portfolio level, which I think is super important. But what are
Mhm.
the first things we should look at within our portfolio companies to implement AI?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is culture. You want to see within your portfolio company if they have the intestinal fortitude and the interest and desire to take this on. Just like all of you showed up for this webinar today, you're curious about this, you want to learn more about it so you can use it effectively. There needs to be that desire at a portfolio company, or else it will fall flat. If there is that desire, and there are folks who you can see would be part of the team to move this down the path, then it's about expecting they will have the same discipline that we just described today for all of you. Have a plan that ladders up to your strategy, know who's going to be in charge of this, build a RACI, and be really, really mindful of what it is you're trying to solve for. But the beauty of that is, again, if you solve for it at one portco, likely is you're going to solve for it at others. And so, but a lot of it starts with culture and communication and the willingness and the discipline to actually be effective.
Yeah, that's great. And we got some time for a couple more. Um, mm, 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 mm. So Jennifer, can you talk about the importance of data availability and quality in portcos as a
Mhm.
basis for AI integration?
Yeah. Well, and that's a really great way to think about it. Like, I think a lot of portcos that are kind of analog feel like they can't enjoy the beauty of the AI journey. And I don't think that's true. In fact, AI can really leapfrog over bad data if you just think about what it is that you're trying to achieve. So if the data isn't great, if you're looking at it to like solve an inventory management problem, you're looking at it to kind of work on customer engagement, et cetera, having data is the basis, but it's in the engineers, that's their job, is to think about what you're trying to achieve and come up with a plan to do so. So I know a local roofer who was talking about totally, analog. This is somebody who is like 4 or 5 people in his family who do this business, and he's using AI to reach out to people to schedule time to like plan for the next week very simply and easily and quickly. And so that's kind of where I get back to saying, like, this does not have to be a huge, heavy lift. It can be as big of a lift as you want it to be. And it's only going to be successful, though, if it's incorporating the discipline of knowing what you're wanting to achieve and then talking to, people like us and saying, like, this is reality. You can do this and you can do it this way, or you can't. But I don't want people to feel like because they're living in an analog world that they can't get some benefit from this, because I feel like everybody really can, and I've seen it happen.
Mhm. We have time for one more question. Where'd it go? I guess in terms of evaluating AI tools or vendors, what are the top due diligence questions to
Yeah.
consider before making that investment into one of these tools?
Yeah. Definitely ask them about, get into the weeds. You may not be a model person, so it's hard to ask those questions, but get somebody who's your advisor who is. You need to understand what their model is that they're using, because right now I use about 140 different models given whatever it is that I'm trying to build. Some are good and some are, all of them are good, but they're good for different reasons. There are models I do not use because of security concerns and other things. So you really need to be asking your vendors, like, what is the model they're using? Where does the data live? When do they switch out the models, and how do they upgrade it? What's their, like, upgrade schedule? Will you be notified of that upgrade and change? Like all those like in the weeds technical things, they need to be able to answer those questions. And are they SOC 2 certified? Do they, all of those kinds of things are really critical because these tools are going to come and go. We're in a rapid plan of development, but you need to be able to ask the model related questions once you get past the like, you know, the shiny demo of like, this is what it's going to do for you. But that'll save you a lot of time and effort.
Yeah,
And also
totally.
think about, and also think internally, like, do you want to buy something else or do you just want to build it yourself? Because you can build pretty simple agentic AI systems that mean maybe you don't have to buy somebody else's.
Yep. Um, Well, Jennifer, I think we're at time. And I wanted to thank you for running us through this and preparing everything today. I think it was super informative. And for everyone's questions that we didn't get to, we're going to follow up via email to answer everyone's questions after this. And obviously, if you want to reach out to myself or Jennifer, you'll have our contact information, but also scan that QR code if you want to schedule time with Jennifer now. But thanks everybody for joining. And Jennifer, any last comments?
No, I would just say, like, really look forward to this AI readiness checklist. I think, especially given the poll question and the results of that, everyone's struggling with the fact that they're not sure where it's going to add value and what to do about it and how to keep everybody focused. And that's why I built this readiness checklist like I did, because that's going to help in that regard. So I think it's a really wonderful thing that Apex leaders and we are like sharing out. So take advantage of it.
Check out that checklist.
Check out the checklist.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks again, Jennifer.
Thanks. It's been great. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Enjoy your week.